Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. We have a matchup of number 1 versus number 2 on Saturday afternoon at Coleman Coliseum. I certainly hope the refs stay the hell out of the way. So let's go ahead. First look at a number 1 versus number 2 matchup. Alabama hosting Auburn. We do not have a point spread, but as far as I'm concerned, not too early to look ahead. First of all, credit to these two teams. Listen, I know it would have been number 1 versus number 2 no matter what happened on Tuesday night. It sure was nice, though, that both of them took care of business on the road, by the way. Auburn goes to Vandy. You know, producer Matt was following that one with a fine-tooth comb. I know it got weird in the middle of the game. Doesn't change the fact that they win by double figures going away. And then Alabama just stepped on Texas's throat and did not let the foot off the gas. So we not only have number 1 versus number 2, but we have a lot of momentum. Both teams coming off a big midweek win. And I just want to go ahead and give my first thoughts on this game as we get ready for what I think should be it will be a really, really fun one on Saturday afternoon, 4 p.m. Eastern. By the way, you know how big this game is? Coleman Coliseum right now, get-in price at Coleman Coliseum is close to $300 with 4 days left to go before this game. I mean, are we talking about paying $400 to get in to see this game? $500? I don't know. I just know it's going to be an insane college basketball atmosphere. I cannot wait. Let me give you some early thoughts on this game. So we've actually talked a lot about Auburn over the last couple of weeks. We've kind of not talked as much about Alabama. And I've mentioned, I think Alabama, I'm stunned that people aren't talking about them. Now, I get Duke's really good, Cooper Flag. I get that Auburn in their own state has stolen kind of the national headlines, right? If you're going to talk about one SEC team, it's probably going to be Auburn. Kentucky's always a story. Calipari's always a story. So I get the idea that there are other things in college basketball. But Alabama right now is the number 2 team in the country, obviously deservedly so. And I think what's incredible is we talk about how awesome Auburn's resume is, and it is. Alabama's resume is insane as well. And I think it just speaks to the talent of both teams that in a league where pretty much anybody can beat anybody on any given night, both these teams come in at 10-1 in league play. Alabama, it will be over a month since they last took a loss when they host Auburn on Saturday. In terms of what Alabama does well, because again, I just don't think we've talked about them enough necessarily. First of all, they do everything well. I think it's worth noting, I really like the guards. You know, Mark Sears gets so much attention. There's been a little negative attention, you know, with the benchings and things of that nature. He was obviously very upset on the sidelines, whatever. But I just bring it up because LeBaron Philon and Aiden Holloway are both playing at a level that I don't think anyone really expected in the preseason. Aiden Mahaney was a guy who struggled at Auburn last year. He's averaging 12 points, shooting the ball much better than I think a lot of people expected. Really struggled from behind the three-point arc last year, hitting 42% at Alabama. And then LeBaron Philon, I'll tell you, man, like you talk about a breakout star in college basketball, true freshman, kind of a top 40-ish recruit, but he wasn't on anybody's, McDonald's All-American impact player list. Well, he's averaging 10 points per game. He is leading the team in steals. He's getting a bunch of assists, and those guards are really good. The other thing about Alabama, listen, there's a lot of teams that have size, and we talked about this with our Contenders Pretenders episode on Tuesday, is there's a lot of teams that have size in college basketball. I don't know that anybody just along the front line specifically goes as big as Alabama, which they basically have Jaren Stevenson playing the 3 at 6'11". They have Grant Nelson playing the 4 at 6'11", 7 feet, and they have Cliff Omiori playing the 5 at 6'11", 7 feet as well. And so I know Duke kind of has that stature of they're the tallest team in college basketball. I would argue nobody's bigger on the front line than Alabama, and it shows because I think what's interesting about Alabama, everybody's kind of talking about, Mark Sears and the three-point shot, whatever. You know what's crazy? They're not even a great three-point shooting team, about 34% on the season. Now, they take a ton, but they're only shooting 34%. But what I don't think people appreciate or realize, because you think Alabama's kind of a finesse team, right? They kind of do whatever. They kind of shoot a lot of threes. They play fast, whatever. Alabama is one of the best rebounding teams in all of college basketball, a team that currently, right now, as we speak, is the right now as we speak the number 2 team in defensive rebounds behind only Illinois, and they have a top 20 rebound percentage, which basically means the percentage of rebounds that are available. They're top 20 in the nationally in terms of grabbing them off the boards. And so you look at what Alabama is capable of doing. It's not only that they play really fast. It's not only that they're the number 1 scoring defense or number 1 scoring offense in all of college basketball. It's the fact that they are the number 1 scoring offense in all of college basketball while also being elite on the boards. They create a lot of second opportunities for themselves, third opportunities for themselves. They limit your third opportunities. And so I'm just kind of blown away by what they do because I don't think they get enough credit. Now, defensively, they still need to be better, but it is sort of worth noting they're the number 1 scoring team in college basketball. 2, the defense is certainly improved. And 3, obviously, look, we understand that all the metrics are a little bit skewed because they play so fast, have so many possessions, etc. From the Auburn perspective, listen, we've talked a lot about Auburn. I don't think there's a lot of new ground to cover. I mentioned it on the Tuesday show. I think this idea that Auburn right now is not trending to be like a historically great team potentially, I think it's nonsense. Now, listen, they got to win some of these games. They still have to play Alabama twice. They have to play at Kentucky. So the easy part of their schedule is far from done. But at the same time, listen, we've talked about it. Have beaten 2 of the 3 best teams in the Big 12, Houston and Iowa State. Beat Purdue, which up until Tuesday was the number 1 team in the Big 10. They've now won 10 games in the SEC against teams that are 8 games, against teams in the SEC that are expected to make the NCAA tournament. Now we'll see if they all get there. We'll see if a Texas or a Georgia ends up getting there. But the wins are unbelievable. Tennessee at home, at Ole Miss, at Mississippi State at home. They're playing really, really good basketball. As far as what they do, listen, like Alabama, super deep. I thought it was worth noting on Tuesday night, Chaney Johnson, a guy who is not known as one of Auburn's lead scorers, had 20 points in that game. Chaney Johnson had 20 points in the win over Vanderbilt. And that is a guy who's really like the 5th or 6th scoring option on that team, and he goes for 20 against Vandy. Right now, as we talk, he is the 6th leading scorer on that team, and he goes for 20. So you have size down low, which I think matters. Now, they're not quite size-wise as big and as long and as athletic as Alabama, but Dylan Cardwell is a monster. Janai Broome is averaging 11 boards per game, and they're just so physical down low. I think what's also worth noting, we think of Bruce Pearl as tough and physical, his team specifically. I think Bruce Pearl's tough and physical as well. But we think about his teams as being tough and physical. And I just sit there and say, like, I think it's kind of the opposite of Alabama, right? Is that with Alabama, we think of Alabama as they're fast and they're athletic and they're this and they're that. And what does it mean? And blah, 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 and this and that. And now it's like, it's kind of the opposite with Purdue. We think of them as big, physical, tough, but are they a team that is skilled enough kind of on the offensive end of the court? Well, I'll tell you what, according to all the advanced analytics, they're not only offensively gifted, they are the best offense in college basketball. Number 1 in offensive efficiency, according to Ken Pom, shooting 37% from 3. And I think what's important is it's not only a guy or 2. Chad Baker-Mazara, 37% from 3. Tahad Pettiford, 40% from 3. Miles Kelly, 40% from 3. Denver Jones doesn't take a ton, but 46% from 3 on the season, 44% from 3, excuse me. So they shoot the ball well. They rebound the ball well. They are an elite team. In terms of my first thoughts, and maybe we make a final pick on this one on Thursday's show, it's tough. Listen, let me even backtrack by saying this. I think these, not only are they number 1, number 2 in the poll, I have said for about 3 weeks, I think they're the 2 best teams in college basketball. Ryan Fowler is a host, tied 100.9 in Tuscaloosa. I go on with him every week. I've been telling him for about 3-4 weeks. I said, I think you 2 are the best teams in college basketball. I know Duke was ranked higher. I don't care. Duke's really good. And Duke might end up winning it all. They might make a Final Four, whatever. But I think these are the 2 best teams that I have seen all year. And I think I got to give the edge to Alabama. First of all, I mentioned it, the game's at Coleman Coliseum. And by the way, I know it's a big topic in Tuscaloosa that Alabama fans are selling their tickets to opposing teams' fans. I don't think that's going to be very much of an issue Saturday afternoon. I think it's going to be loud. I think it's going to be pro-Crimson Tide. I joke with my buddy Ryan Fowler. He's got season tickets. He said this is even a game that I might go to. So, any Alabama fan that has maybe sold a ticket for an Oklahoma game or something like that, I don't think it's going to be much of an issue for this one. 2, I do think they're one of the few teams that physically matches up pretty well with Auburn. Like I said, Auburn is physical and tough, but they're not as, what's the right way to put it? They're not as athletic as they're not as athletic as Alabama. And so, like, to me, I do think that's an X factor. I don't think there's many teams that can neutralize those big guys, and maybe, just maybe, Alabama isn't one of them. Maybe Alabama cannot neutralize those big guys because nobody really has all year. But you go 7 foot, 7 foot, 7 foot, basically across the board, 6'11", 7 foot. I do think that puts a little bit more pressure on Jani Broome. I think it puts a little bit more pressure on some of those other guys. Dylan Cardwell is physical, but I don't know that he's really big. And then again, I think the guard play is probably a little bit better at Alabama as well. So the one thing I will say, I will take Alabama to win. I'll say 84-80. The one thing I do pray for, and it's how I led this segment, I hope, listen, Greg Sankey, do me a favor. Greg Sankey, get your best officiating crew on this game, okay? What I do not need is what we have seen too much this year. 84 foul shots between Alabama and Texas A&M when they played at Texas A&M. What was it? I forget the number off the top of my head. I think it was close to 60 foul shots in Texas, Arkansas last week. What I do not need, Greg Sankey, is 50 to 60 foul shots. Let these teams play. Let them be physical. They're big boys. They can both handle it. That is my only concern about this game. Is this a game that gets ruined by the referees? I hope not, but I'll take Alabama to win 84-80. And yeah, producer Matt's already chiming in. If the refs are crazy, Sears may shoot 500 free throws. That's not hyperbole. Really quickly, I actually just want to look this up because I remember last year in the first game these two teams played, it was at Coleman Coliseum. Let's take a look. Yeah, it was at Coleman Coliseum. I vividly remember this game. It was the day that Ryan Williams committed to Alabama. Maybe I'm remembering wrong. There was one game where the two teams combined for like 1 million foul shots. It was a tough watch. Give me a second here. Let me see if I can find this game. Was it the second game that they played? Maybe it was the second game that they played. I think it was the second game. The one at Alabama, the one at Auburn, 85 foul shots between the two teams. Alabama at Auburn last year, 85 foul shots between the two teams. I'm praying. Sweet baby Jesus. Like Ricky Bobby here. Sweet baby Jesus. I really hope that the refs don't ruin this game.